In this video, we're going to be looking at one of the most annoying things that happen to your guitar. You turn on the volume and suddenly you hear a crackle or a fizzle. We're going to look at replacing that volume pot. We're also going to look at the various different types of volume pots that you can get. Which one of those might be best for you. Also, you'll watch a video of me soldering a volume pot that is probably a bit more complicated than most, from the 75th anniversary Telecaster that has a little treble bleed circuit and everything on it, but the principles still apply. I wanted to show a pretty complicated volume pot replacement, so whatever guitar that you have at home, it's either going to be amazingly more simple than mine, or it will be, you know, quite similar. I'll also be giving you all the tips and tricks as well, so no matter what type of guitar you have, if you employ all these tips and tricks, it'll be a breeze.
Pots come in two main sizes. One's imperial and the other one is metric. Metric here is a little bit smaller and they're usually used on cheaper guitars, where imperial are on your more expensive brands and your big name guitars. You can get really good quality metric pots, but people tend to prefer these imperials. This is a CTS pot, and as you can see, there is a little bit of writing on top there, and that's how you find the value of your pot. Pots can be 250k ohm, 500k ohm, or 1 meg ohm. Pots can also be either linear or audio. Audio will give you a nice natural rise and fall in volume, where linear will seem like it drops off quite drastically. The pots also have different types of shaft ends. You can get the solid shaft or a notch shaft as well. Also, these shafts can be different lengths. So the very first thing before you change your volume pot is to open it up and see what you've got in there. And if you're not sure, just pop it in the comments and ask me. The tools you need is a screwdriver, a soldering station, a soldering sucker, a pair of nips and grips, and some solder. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the pot off. I have to use a screwdriver. Yours might just pop off. I'm using a wee bit of masking tape here just to protect the control plate because I'm a wee bit lazy, and I'm using these grips to loosen that nut off. Now, don't take it off completely. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to take the screws out of the control plate. That's going to give us a little look at the electronics inside our Telecaster. What I love about the Telecaster is it basically holds its own electronics in place. You can just slot the volume, tone and three-way switch back into that wooden slot. There looks to be a lot of wires here, and it would be very confusing for anyone who's a beginner looking at this. But my biggest tip, and one that I use all the time, is using your smartphone to take lots and lots of pictures of all those wires and where they're connected. Also, what I do is I get a little bit of masking tape and I write down which lug each wire is soldered onto. So just in case I can't read those pictures or I didn't take the right angle, I can use them. Then we heat our soldering iron up to about 350 degrees centigrade, and I am just holding it on those connections and using that solder sucker to remove the excess solder on those joints. I also use my grips to help release the wires from there. I've now removed the old pot, and on the new pot I'm scoring the back so all solder will stick to the back of that pot quite easily. If you don't do this, you might get a cold solder. I've soldered the capacitor to the ground lug, and also just extending that bridge towards the back of the pot, making sure that that ground lug does make connection with those ground wires. This Telecaster also came with a little PCB board which was acting as a treble bleed. If you're soldering PCB boards, you are going to have to knock a temperature soldering iron down, or you run the risk of frying the components. Now we're going to solder on the wires with their respective numbers to that lug number, and all the ground wires are going to be soldered to the back of the pot as well. Now, when you are soldering, take your time. You're going to make really messy solders at the start. Just use your solder sucker to suck all the badness up and have another go. You will get better the more you do this. The other thing as well is just don't have your soldering iron on a pot or any electric component for far too long, because you will eventually fry it. Once you have everything reconnected and soldered, give it a wee bit of a tug just to make sure everything's secure, but then you can flip your control plate around, screw in your screws and reattach your knobs.
So that is replacing your volume knob. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video informative and if you got something from it, think about leaving a like and think about subscribing. If there is another type of guitar mod or fix that you would like me to cover on this channel, please leave it down in the comments and I will try my best to provide. But until the next video, ta-ta!